Why I Left Christianity for Spirituality, Part 2. My name is Peter Abundant, aka Dr. Abundant, ordained minister and Ph.D. in Metaphysical Sciences, also the author of The Enlightened Shadow and Spiritual, Not Religious, which is available on Amazon. Now, this is a sequel to a video that I made where I talk about why I essentially left Christianity for spirituality. And it was a general kind of broad overview as to my journey and where I went and all the processes and the steps that I took and exactly what led me to where I am now. Now, due to that video, I was asked a few questions and I decided to elaborate more and get more into detail about the journey. So that way it can just better give context for people and support you, especially on your journey. If you're feeling, a sense of turmoil or questioning, or this a need to really have perspective in your own journey, especially if you're somebody who has been, raised and brought up in an environment of, religion, and you feel like there's something a little bit off and you're seeking more. Okay. This hopefully will support you in your journey as to understanding who you are and your connection with that which we call God. So traditionally, I started out with just the basic, background where I was brought up Christian. We didn't go to church every single Sunday, but we went to church on the particular, major holidays, Christmas, Easter, things of that nature. Now, I was brought up Methodist Christian. Now, at the time, I didn't know what that meant, right? There are so many different sects and denominations of Christianity. I don't think many people knows what they mean, but it really gives you an indication of just how diverse our paths can be. When somebody reads the Bible and looks upon the Bible and they see something, they identify something that resonates with them. And so they go on a path that resonates with them the most. And eventually, by sharing their insight, they create, a mass, right? They create a community based around the resonating with that way of seeing the Bible, right? That interpretation. And that's why you have so many different sects, denominations of Christianity, of Islam, of Judaism, of even Buddhism, right? You can go down the list of all the religions and you will find that it's just not simply this, right? There are branches of it. So that will lead into the bottom line of this video. But I felt a disconnect. I felt something was missing in my life. I felt there was a definite misalignment in me and my understanding and connection with that which we call God. And so I decided, I'm going to go down the journey, up the journey, to really figure out what this thing we call God is about. And I only knew that it is through religion that we gain that understanding, that insight. And so I decided to explore other religions. Now, my mother, she introduced me to Islam, because our family, we had an aunt and our cousins, her children, were Muslim. And so that was the first introductory, experience to a religion outside of Christianity. And so I attended a Muslim school. And that Muslim school was great. I had great experiences, made great connections, made great friends. And I enjoyed the process of learning about something different. But there was a disconnect for me because that particular denomination or sect of Islam was a little bit too militant for me, right? When we think about Islam, we think of particular categories of certain ideas come to mind, right? You have 5% Muslims, you have Farrakhan Muslims. I'm sure there's another name for them. You have, traditional Black American Muslims, right? You have Sufism. Those are more mystical, Muslims. And so the school I attended was a Black African-American school, right? For Islamic studies. Now with that, being a Black man, I resonated with that. And I also resonated with the emotions, with the challenges that they were actually addressing with their teachings, coming from the perspective of an African American man. So they were quite militant in their approach. Can be very argumentative, very matter of fact, not giving, not really getting into understanding and getting into, grace as far as communication goes. And so even when they spoke about Christianity, it was very much so in a way that was judgmental or shaming Christians. And so that didn't resonate with me because that's just not who I am. If you follow me, you just know I'm not one to judge or shame anything, anyone, right, for their beliefs and how they feel and how they want to, move and maneuver through life. That's on them. I support you as long as you are happy and you are aligned with who you truly are, then you do what's best for you. So there is no shame coming from me, even if I don't agree, even if I don't understand, which is really, really rare because I tend to understand a lot of things, but I may not agree with it. You know what I mean? And I definitely may not align with it for myself, but I definitely will support you in actually moving forward with that which resonates with you. So for me, with Islam, mind you, that was the only introduction that I had to Islam. So I, being a teenager, categorized Islam as that entire experience, not recognizing that there was more to it. There were other options, other branches. So at that point, I decided, okay, Islam isn't the way for me. Then I was introduced to SDA, Seventh-Day Adventists, okay, and decided to go to a school for Seventh-Day Adventist students and to learn about that religion. That was a great experience as well because that school was away. We slept in dorms. We, went to the cafeteria. We went to different classrooms. It was a great experience, and I thought it was a good idea to prep me for college. Now, this school was great in that it was something that was more familiar because I was brought up a Christian. So it made sense, all the things that were being taught and being shown to me that were in the Bible. So therefore, I was like, okay, this resonates with me. This feels right? But really, it felt familiar. And so I decided to convert Seventh-Day Adventist. Now, if you're not familiar with Seventh-Day Adventist religion, it is a Christian religion. They basically go to church on Saturday instead of Sunday, right? The seventh day is Saturday. So that's really the main aspect of their religion. That's why it's called 7-day, right? Adventist. But also, they practice certain things, right? Like all religions do. They have particular culture or traditions and rituals, right? Even though I'm talking about Christianity, most Christians don't like the name or the word ritual, but that's what it is. Okay. And so for them, it was going to church on Saturday. It was diet that was really, really significant and something that I am grateful for because I've taken a lot from that education of not eating animals. So really vegetarian, also vegan diet, predominantly in the Seventh-Day Adventist community. I stated before that when you do research on the longest living people, when you will find that there are pockets. There's a popular study called the Blue Zone study or Blue Zone diet, where they find that people in these blue zones eat a similar diet, which is basically a diet of, whole foods, right? Plants, vegetables, fruit, nuts, legumes, beans, things of that nature. Okay. No animal products. Those people live the longest. Now, there may be some, exceptions where they eat a little bit of animal products, but ultimately the diet is predominantly plant-based. Those are the longest living people in the planet today. So one of those sections is a place called Loma Linda, I believe it's called, in California, where it is a Seventh-Day Adventist community. And that pocket of people are one of the blue zones. So get into it. If you're not somebody who's resistant against the plant-based community and veganism, you can't deny that kind of research. You have to recognize that, hey, there is something to this. These are the longest living people on the planet today. They're doing something right. And it is not just isolated to Seventh-Day Adventists, okay? It is not just isolated to that religion, okay? It is spread out. There's a place in Costa Rica where there's a pocket of people. They predominantly eat a plant-based diet. It has nothing to do with Seventh-Day Adventism, okay? So recognize that. But other things that I found that didn't resonate with me as much when it came to the Seventh-Day Adventist community was, the restrictions. A lot of religious belief systems, they have restrictions. That's just what it is, right? And we have to also identify that, just like with the Muslim school that I went to, that it was a particular sect of Islam, right? It was a particular perspective or experience of Islam, the Black African-American Islam experience and culture. Same thing can be said about this school that I was going to, because though, yes, it was Seventh-Day Adventist, and the Seventh-Day Adventist community tends to be general. It tends to be a umbrella. You still have to acknowledge culture, how cultures and heritage influences, right, that particular experience. So in other words, the school I went to was predominantly owned and run by white people, right? There were, of course, people of color there, Latinas, Asians, all that was mixed in. But when it came to going to church, the church was a white Caucasian church. And so, for example, at church, there is no clapping. If somebody says something that you agree with or really are inspired by, there was no clapping, right? There was no saying amen or praise God. Like there was no things like that was going on in that experience or in that environment. Dancing is frowned upon in the Seventh-Day Adventist community. Wearing jewelry is frowned upon. Of course, wearing particular things was frowned upon. You couldn't really have things on you that were, secular, right? That were outside of the religious belief system. So you really have to be mindful. Music, that was a big one. No secular music, right? And I understood to a certain degree, be mindful about hip hop, be mindful about R&B, like those things really not in alignment with religious mindset. But it was really strict, where it was just absolute, just unacceptable. And the only music we can listen to was gospel music. Okay. Understood. I get it. But though I understood it as a teenager who was in high school, and therefore they had to be rules and restrictions to make sure things don't get out of order, to me, I understood it as still something that they carry over into adulthood. So you have people that was just their life. And to be quite honest, it wasn't a life that I felt was exciting. It wasn't a life that I felt like was one where, I'm looking at this person and they have a life that I would love to create for myself, something similar to that. It was very dry. It was very basic, right? It wasn't really something that was exciting, though. Yes, you can travel, you can do all those things, but it was very lame, to be quite honest, and to be raw about it. And today, that's what I'm going to just be raw. And though I did convert Seventh-Day Adventist while I was at the high school, and I attended that high school for 2 years, went on to Seventh-Day Adventist college. And the interesting thing is, it's like in high school, you're in this isolated, capsule bubble where you're constantly restricted and being told, okay, you cannot do this, you can't do that, don't do this, don't do that, don't do that. And you just have to follow the rules, right? Then you go into college. College is a whole nother environment, and it goes across the board, not just isolating a religion, but college, even though it was a Seventh-Day Adventist college, everybody was wild. Okay. You're talking about wild. All the girls who were, forbidden from going on dates when they were in high school and never had a boyfriend, those were the wildest girls in college. Same thing for the men. Everybody was just mixing, mingling, being intimate and all that, right? And again, that just goes without saying with college, but I felt like it was more so because of the restrictive environment of high school, which is where you should be able to kind of understand and really get in touch with your sexuality, understanding intimacy, understanding boundaries. High school is the time where that should take place. So that way you're mature when you get to college to know how to deal with it to an extent. So college was wild. College was so wild that I rarely went to class. Okay. I was just not really partying. I was going to parties, but I still didn't drink. I still didn't smoke. I've never been one to do those things anyway, but I was definitely hanging out, and definitely enjoying hanging out with all the women, all the girls, young ladies. It was a good time. Okay. Too much of a good time, to be honest. And everybody was having a good time. But I also understood that there was a religious aspect to what was going on. So you're doing all these things that felt natural in terms of being, having a human experience, but was not in alignment with the very nature of where we were, being that it was a Seventh-Day Adventist school, right? So though, Saturday night, right, it was like, that Saturday morning, we just came from church. But then Saturday night, we would have the parties. Okay. So it was the reverse. Usually in Black culture, we joke about having the parties on Saturday, going crazy, doing all the sinning. And then Sunday, you go to church to ask for forgiveness, right? That's the ongoing joke. But for us, it was the opposite, where we went to church, we rested. And then that night when the sun set, we went wild. Okay. And if you don't know, that's just how it works. So Friday night was when the Sabbath begins. So night to night is the entire day, right? So Friday night, Sabbath begins. You rest. Rest looks like no, TV, no music, simply just chilling, maybe having dinner, eating, gathering with your friends. But no partying, no drinking, no interacting, even though smartphones wasn't really a thing back then. That wasn't a thing. Internet really wasn't a thing. So you had to just be, okay? You had to just be. A lot of people would sleep. A lot of us would go on nature walks. That was a big thing in high school. On the Sabbath, we would have a class school trip or we would go on a hike somewhere. And that was basically what we would do on the Sabbath day. So anyway, Friday night, Sabbath starts. Saturday night, Sabbath ends. Saturday morning, we go to church. We have our potlucks and our, lunch and breakfast, lunch and all that stuff. And then everybody will probably go to sleep, right? Most times we'll just go to sleep and then we'll rest and then we'll wait till Saturday night and then the parties will happen. So that was college life. Okay. And then Saturday is whatever. Sunday is whatever. You do whatever you want to do. And that was college life. Okay. And now you had this mix of people acknowledging that they had yearnings, right? They had desires, particularly sexual urges. But then you had the belief systems of being Christian where, you had young ladies who were, trying to do the right thing, what they believed to be the right thing, but yet they had these urges. So they would create these blurry lines of, well, okay, I did this, but that's okay. I didn't fully go all the way. So I'm all right. And, things like that really, it didn't just get under my nerve just as a man who wanted to get some, But it just got on my nerves because everybody was so conflicted. Everybody was torturing themselves with the conflict of being a human being and being a Seventh-Day Adventist, right? Or being somebody of religion. And it goes that way too for, people that I went to school, while studying Islam. Same thing. You have the young ladies, they would have the head wraps, but yet they want to look cute. So they will wear the head wraps while they're in school. And then once they leave school and they get a few blocks away from the school, they would take them off. Their hair will look pretty. Their makeup will look done. They will be very flirtatious outside of school. So, there was this constant conflict. And that got to me after a certain point in time because I dealt with it myself. Right. And so I decided, you know what? This sucks. I don't like this. If all of us are having a particular experience, then it isn't the experience that is wrong. You have to ask yourself, if all of us are having these urges, these desires, then it is natural to have them. Okay. Yes, you have to be mindful and be responsible for those things, but they're not wrong. It's okay to dance to music, right? That is what music does. That is what the body does. It is an expression. But people take that in religious texts like, oh, it is sexualized. It is tempting, right? So then we get into the whole like how men have used religion to control people so that way they don't have to deal with their own sense of, desires, right? Or sexuality, right? So they want to control it and project it onto other people like, hey, I don't want to deal with women looking attractive, being sexy. So let's make up this rule, this law, and say that it is backed by our religion that we cannot do this, okay? Because it is tempting me, you see? Now, you can have that conversation with Islam as well, because a lot of people get into that conversation in that debate. Whereas with women, they have to, or they should, wrap their hair up, right? Because it is deemed tempting to other men. And the only man that is supposed to see their hair is their husband or, maybe the men in their family. But it should only be seen at home, covering up their whole entire body. Some people look at that as, being sexist, like, oh, they treat their women a certain way. Now, to be honest, my experience of that was one of, it is actually a sign of respecting the woman, right? And the women that I've seen that were very, very mature, amazing, and powerful, they wore that, right? They wore those garments with a sense of regalness and grace, knowing or having a understanding as to what it means to them. And it meant something not degrading, not something that they felt was being sexist, but in fact, something that represents power. Okay. Even when you go to a Muslim mosque, okay, the men are in the front, the women are in the back. Some people look at that as sexist. Why are the men in front and the women in the back? Well, one of the examples that I was taught that if women are up front, if you're not familiar with how they pray, there's a lot of bending over, okay? Bending over and keeping your head to the ground. So if your head is to the ground, that means your butt is in the air. So it is really a respectful arrangement. So that way women feel safe with bending down and men not looking at them. All right. Yes. Men have to be responsible for their own actions, but we have to create a space where we make sure women are feeling safe. Right. So you have that sense of like, well, is this for men or is this for women? Is this for men who just can't control their urges, or is this really to protect and honor women? That's something you have to define for yourself. But I tend to lean into the protection of women. That's important to me. Though I recognize that men need to and must own their, temptations, their desires, their fetishes, or what have you. Okay. So back to Seventh-Day Adventists though. with all that being said, I felt like it was important that a spiritual faith, when somebody's on the spiritual journey, that it must be in alignment with accepting the human experience. Okay. We are spiritual beings, but we are living in a human body, having a human experience. And I think it's important to embrace that experience, not judge it, not shun it, not shame it, not, avoid it and act like it isn't there. So at some point after my first year of college, because I flunked out, like I said, I didn't go to class, I decided, you know what, I need to just reset. And I came back home to New York and decided to just take a break from all of it. And I spent a year just being me. And I eventually went to school for massage therapy, became a massage therapist. The place that I worked at was called the Home Spa, which was run by a woman named Debbie. Debbie, I love, love, love to this day. And Debbie at the Home Spa, she had a bunch of books around in the spa, in the lobby, right? Books, like real books. And so what happened was I started reading these books. Like I was always clear that I was on this spiritual journey and I was ready to get back on the horse. Like, all right, let's do this. Knowing what my experiences was with Islam, with Seventh-Day Adventism, right? And so I started reading these books and she had a whole array of different books. And so I'm picking up different things and I'm picking up things about Buddhism. I'm picking up things about, science of mind, which is like Ernest Holmes. I'm picking up Neville Goddard. I'm picking up things by, I said Ernest Holmes, which is Unity Church, I believe. Ernest Holmes is the founder of Unity Church. I could be wrong with that one, but Unity Church is a spiritual but religious organization, but they teach more from a metaphysical point of view. Okay. They talk a lot about Christianity or Christ or the Christ consciousness. So they reference the Bible often. And so anyway, I'm reading all these different books and I'm intrigued and I'm like all in. I'm like, oh, this is beautiful. I need to learn more. And that's where my spiritual journey actually began, from the religious journey to the actual spiritual journey. And so after reading all these people, and especially Neville Goddard, I mean, it opened me up, and then at that point, The Secret came out. And so manifestation was a big thing. And Neville Goddard was more like, he's like the grandfather of, that New Age movement, also Florence Shin. And so when I started reading those books, then I got pulled into the conscious spiritual journey. Then I started getting into metaphysical sciences. Then that's when I actually took my journey to begin to get my Ph.D. in metaphysical science and become an ordained minister. Now, it didn't just happen overnight. I, again, went through some ups and downs, took some breaks, and then went back into the studies, went to Unity Church for a little bit, went to another place called Center of Spiritual Living, all right, here in Atlanta. I went there a couple of times, quite a few times. Loved that it was a familiar setting because it's like a church setting, but less traditional, more, casual. And you can go there as you are. And for real, as you are. And everybody was friendly and beautiful, and it was very authentic. Whereas sometimes you go to a church and they say, oh, welcome our new visitors. And, they say hi and they give you a hug and it just doesn't feel authentic. It feels a little bit weird. Okay. And so, but at a place like Center for Spiritual Living or Unity Church, the people there are truly authentic. You feel the energy, you feel the love, you feel their happiness. Okay. Because they are fully accepted as themselves. And that's what I loved about those experiences. Now, for me, going to a place on a consistent basis every single week just wasn't my cup of tea. Though, if somebody was to say, hey, let's go to a church, those two would be the ones that I would go to, you see. And so if you're on this spiritual journey and you're questioning and you're saying to yourself, well, I'm still identifying with Christianity and there's something about it, but yet I recognize there is more that I can learn, then I recommend going to either Unity or Center for Spiritual Living. Okay. You're going to meet a group of diverse, beautiful people there, and they're going to take the teachings of Christianity to another level. Now, this isn't all to say that Christianity is not valid, right? That there's no value there, that it isn't real. Okay. The teachings in the Bible, I fully support, believe in, think are important. Religion, Christianity itself, that's another story. Because with Christianity, I feel like it's too restrictive. The spiritual journey should not be restrictive, right? The spiritual journey should be one of allowance, accepting who you are and allowing yourself to evolve based on what you recognize as resonating with you, okay? You cannot put God, and if that is your journey, if that is your objective, if that's your mission, you cannot put God in a box. And that box often looks like this, right? The Bible. It is a box, literally. So you have to recognize that though there is great wisdom and knowledge in this book called the Bible, in this box, God cannot be confined to this one thing. God cannot be confined to this one religion, okay? God is all things, all religions, all beliefs, all people. When you understand that or even begin to get a glimpse of that, please go deeper. Okay. And so when I recommend to you, if you're a Christian, if you are a Muslim, go to these other centers and just check it out. Just have the experience, and recognize the vibe, recognize the frequency, recognize the love that people will exude onto you when you step into this space. Okay. It may even feel odd to you because it's going to be so much love coming from these places. All right. So understand God is infinite. Okay. So God is not about restrictions. God is not about, having you not be your most authentic self. And that was my main problem with SDA, with Islam, especially that particular sect of Islam, is that I did not feel like my authentic self. I did not feel like I could be my authentic self. I felt like I had to fit into a mold. And that was unnatural, unsettling, and it didn't provide for my happiness. It didn't provide for a sense of peace in who I know myself to be. Even though I'm still a teenager and I'm learning myself, you still understand who you are, because when things or people tell you this and that, and these are the rules, and this is what you're supposed to do and not supposed to do, if you're like, but that doesn't make sense, then that's already telling you enough. That's telling you a lot. Whenever you are asking a question and no one can answer you, or they say, don't ask questions, this is what it is, or they tell you an answer and it still doesn't make sense to you, then there is more to be gained. There is more to be learned. Then that structure doesn't fit you, okay? You're round, that thing is a triangle. It doesn't match. And so you have to understand that and respect that. And so you just keep going on your journey. You keep going, all right? Now, when I think about things like religion versus spirituality, I think about a contrast of two things. And so I'm going to quickly break down these two things so you can really understand essentially why I don't identify with religion, especially as the end goal of the path that you're going to take. Religion is often the beginning. That's how we all start. But we often expand or go beyond religion. We can still identify as Christian or Muslim or Buddhist, but at some point you begin to grow where you are that and more, you see? So with religion, I find that it is basic. It is very generic, okay? It's made to fit as many people as possible. Whereas spirituality is dynamic. It is authentic, meaning that it is for you. It is individual. Okay. It is for you and only you, right? Religion is communal. It is for a community. It is to fit a community. And that's why the community comes together. They say, okay, these are the things we agree upon, and these are the things that we are going to follow. Okay. And we're going to be in line with this. Sometimes people can get a little bit like, well, I'm over this, right? I have questions. Those people get cast out. They get shunned. Or they just, remain in the group and they just continue to get judged by the rest of the group because the group is like, this is our agreement. What are you doing? If you are calling yourself Muslim, this is what you're supposed to do. If you're calling yourself Christian, this is what you're supposed to be doing. If you're not doing that, what are you doing here? You see, and that is your time to transition out of being stuck in religion and going into spirituality. Religion is about exclusivity, right? This is exclusive to us in our group, right? It is about division. We are this, they are that. Okay. You get into like the fights and the wars between Christians and Islam. Okay. It's in the history. All right. Whereas spirituality is inclusive. Inclusivity is everything. Okay. It's encapsulating everything. We are all one. Okay. Now, religion also can be about external validation. Most religions, maybe except for Buddhism, and of course some others, I'm not going to list all of them, but will identify the divine creator as something separate from them. Okay. They even identify that to even communicate with that divine creator, that which we call God, we need a middleman. All right. For Christians, it's Jesus. So then you have this external thing happening where God is separate from you and you have to communicate with somebody else to communicate to God on your behalf. Catholic Church, the priest, that's the middle guy. All right. So you have to recognize there's disconnections here. Whereas spirituality, instead of external validation, spirituality is about internal acceptance and seeing that it is all happening within you, not out away from you. Everything that's happening outside of you is an expression of you. Okay, so it all starts here. You see, so now you start to understand, like, this was the understanding for me on this journey and why I am no longer Christian and why I'm spiritual. Another thing too is, and this is not a knock on any religion, but because we went through all the different things, religion kind of gives you a framework. It tells you what to do, tells you what's right, what's wrong. It's communal, right? So you have a community, you have people with you. That's very important. As humans, we are tribal, right? We like community. It's hard for us to be alone. So when you think about religion, it is very tribal. It is structured because a lot of people are not willing to find out for themselves. They want to be told what to do. Okay. So essentially in all, it's easy. Okay. It's more simplified. It's more direct. Right. Whereas spirituality, that can be a little bit more challenging. So you're talking about two kinds of people. You're talking about the one who just wants to kind of, all right, just tell me what to do. This is what I need to do to go to heaven and not hell. All right, cool. I'm going to just follow those rules and do that, even though it goes against every aspect of who I am. Rather than spirituality, though, says, hey, you can basically get to this destination of true fulfillment, happiness, enlightenment, but you got to figure it out on your own. Now, you can have gurus and teachers and read books and things like that to support you, but you have to acknowledge what of those things really resonate with who you are, because everybody's path is different. If you have two people who have the same guru, the same spiritual teacher, they're still not going to reach their destination at the same exact time or the same exact way, because they are two different people. No two Christians are alike. No two Muslims are alike. So everybody is really essentially different anyway. So the idea of religion is really an illusion, because though it has the appearance of structure, it has the appearance of community, the reality is you are still you on your unique spiritual walk path, and you got to figure it out by yourself. The issue with religion is they are telling you this is the way, this is the way, this is the way. And though your consciousness is trying to communicate to you that this isn't right, you're always at odds with yourself. You're always in conflict with yourself, fighting with yourself. So you have to understand that that in itself says this alone is not the way. And so you have to trust in that and move beyond it. Okay. So essentially, that is my story. That is why I am no longer Christian. That is why I am no longer a Seventh-Day Adventist and identify with spirituality. I identify more with metaphysics, metaphysical sciences. I identify with the fact that my consciousness is the thing that creates all of my reality. Okay, just like your consciousness is the thing that creates all of your reality. Even your idea of God, your understanding of God, your truth of what God is, guess what? Is created by your consciousness. It doesn't mean that it's wrong. It just means that it is yours. God is infinite. God is not confined to a book. God is not confined to a group. Okay? God is confined by each person and their understanding at the moment. So even in that, it is ever evolving, growing, expanding. Okay? That is the truth. I hope this supports you. Thank you so much for watching, for listening. Please continue to join me on this journey of understanding self and recognizing that you are the creator of your reality. Peace and abundance always. Feel free. Go to drabundant.com, subscribe, and get access to this free ebook, The Power Within. Thank you so much.